Okay, let's go to work.
Oh,
Oh, now your timer doesn't want to play.
my sound hasn't been coming through lately. See? I don't know what happened.
Oh, it didn't even count. Oh, I like it.
Mm-mm.
Okay.
Hi,
Hi,
I'm Janie,
and I'm Dan.
and we're Achieve the Lifestyle.
Yep.
And today we're going to be talking about the children.
Yes, we are going to talk about the current state of health
Mhm.
in the youth and how that pertains to the current state of health with adults
Right,
and maybe what we should be doing about it before it gets completely out of hand.
correct. Yes,
What we think, our opinion on the matter.
right. Um, and so there is a lot of statistics out there showing that the rates of obesity within children is increasing. And when we say obesity in children, if anybody has kids, you get the growth chart, and it's at the 85th percentile or higher is considered a red flag for the possibility of prediabetes, diabetes, or other metabolic disorders. Now, disclaimer, BMI can be full of shit sometimes because it doesn't include muscle mass. And when you have a child and they're on a curve, sometimes they're following their own curve. So when I talk to parents, I don't get too concerned about the weight. I use the weight as an identifier, and then what is that child doing? Now, if their weight's above in the 85th percentile and above, and they're eating Cheetos, fast food every day, they're not exercising, that's a concern. But if they're 85th percentile and above, and they're super active, maybe they're like a football player or something like that, and their parents are really tall, their parents have more muscle, so it's just all within context. So please consider that. But for the sake of this, we're just going to talk about broad picture. 85 percentile and above is a red flag.
Okay. I mean, I guess there we could talk about the eyeball test. If it
Yeah,
don't look right, it don't fly right type of thing.
right.
Where it's like I can look at a kid and be like, this kid's a little on the pudgy side. Why is that the case? Observationally speaking, I, I'm 39 years old, so I'm going to be 40. I grew up in the 90s, late 80s and 90s. Um, I remember a time when in the class there was like a token heavy kid and a token heavy girl, but that was pretty much it. All the
Mm.
other kids were super active, and the body composition of the average child tend to be a little bit on the
Yeah, well, it's a
leaner side of
spectrum,
things.
right? So
Yeah.
they're more
Yeah.
heavily populated on the leaner side.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was more heavily populated on the leaner
And
side.
it's tricky with kids because before kids go through growth spurts, sometimes they'll get a little quote unquote pudgy, so they kind of get wide and then they grow. I mean, I see that a lot with kids going through growth
Yeah.
spurts. So it's something you need to watch.
And
It's
when
not
they're
just
like,
snapshots.
like preschoolers and toddlers, they got the little toddler belly. Like that's completely different. But I'm
Oh
talking
yeah,
about like,
yeah.
when we're 8, 9, 10, into the teens, like
Mm-hmm.
the kids that, you can tell like, okay, this is a problem versus, oh, this kid's just growing
Yeah.
and developing. I don't know. They're the
It's
eyeball test will
right.
always dictate there.
Right. And so the body composition of the child, so, you know, 19 and under, 20 and under, is drastically different on an
Once,
average
yeah,
than
once the
we were in
hormones
school.
start, yeah,
No,
kick
no,
in.
no. I'm talking about, you said there's a token,
Oh, yeah, 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 yeah. So
obese
that,
person. So
yep.
now there's more of that. So it's transitioned to where there's more kids that are overweight and obese as opposed to when we were growing up.
And I'll even like expand on that, like having experience working with college athletes, high school athletes, middle school athletes, even the kids that are considered athletes because they play a sport, they're dedicated to a sport. A lot of those kids, for the level of activity that you think they're putting out, they're still struggling with certain with weight issues like body composition issues. Let's not call it weight. Body composition issues where they're trending on the the more body fat side of things. And you think because they're playing football, they're playing lacrosse, they're playing volleyball, whatever it may be, that they're going to be in a better state of body composition. But I see the opposite. So that here's where we start talking about what problems, what could be causing that, and what do we do about it. Okay. um yeah, that's my premise. Like, it's been a couple years and I'm just like, man, I feel like some of these kids don't look like athletes. And not to say that we're playing sports to look a certain way, but it's a concern. It's a concern.
Yeah.
Like, we're talking health now.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, do we need to go over the fact that this whole healthy at any size thing is not real? Like, that's not scientific. That's not a fact. Like, if you
You're
are,
getting into a little sticky
I'm,
conversation. I
yeah,
know, I know. Well, I
we
think
things got to be
that
said.
I don't believe in healthy at any size, because you can be quote unquote overweight or obese and be healthy,
For
okay,
now.
metabolically,
Yeah.
right? For now. You can also be a normal BMI or maybe um, underweight and be drastically unhealthy,
Correct.
but per societal standards, you look
Yeah,
amazing,
you look amazing, so they
right? And
think you're
so I
healthy.
think weight is like losing weight, gaining weight is an outcome. It's not the actions. I care more about the actions. What are you doing on a daily basis? And what I'm more concerned about preventing things like later on. And so that's why I think the increase in obesity in kids, which is leading to increased rates of type 2 diabetes, is so concerning, because their health is at stake. It's not fat shaming. It's
Mm-hmm.
not, do they look good? I don't, like, I care, because I don't care, right? I don't care what the weight of your kid is until it starts to impact their health, whether it's low or high.
And the thing is, with the healthy at any size thought, is that you may be healthy, like we said, for now, but it's an undeniable fact that certain body compositions, or not lack thereof, or present, if your body fat percentage is really high, at some point you're going to run into health complications. That's the way the body works. The body does not belong in a high state of adiposity, meaning excess
Right.
fat. It just doesn't. So blood pressure is going to become an issue. Blood sugar regulation is going to become an issue at some point. Just because at this snapshot in time you want to, like, oh, my shit looks great.
Right.
It doesn't mean that next year you're not going to be out there in the pre-diabetic, maybe even in the diabetic, etc.,
Right.
etc. So that's why this is a concern.
But what they're
Now,
finding, sorry to cut you off, is that it's becoming more of a concern in children. The rates of obesity are increasing, and they correlate strongly with the rates of type 2 diabetes. Now, they've identified that type 2 diabetes in children is pathologically different than type 2 diabetes in adults. It's more aggressive. They're more likely to develop vascular complications, which can lead to cardiac complications, which can lead to eye problems, which can lead to kidney problems, and which can lead to neurological problems. So sensation, feeling, things like that. So it is a concern. It's a
yeah,
huge concern.
I think, like, that's why we always talk about body composition versus weight, or even, yes, the ocular test, like the way you look is something to consider, because you can kind of be like, okay, this we should look deeper into this. It can point to something, but we'll always talk about what does the body composition look like, if we can put them in an in-body, a DECA scan, whatever it may be, because we are talking about health beyond fitness, and beyond, a certain feeling or look. We're talking about, what does your long-term health look like? What does the blood work look like? What do the hormones look like? What does your quality of life look like as a result of where you're at health wise? I think, because I can speak for myself, I've been in a position where I had an 8 pack, and then when the blood work popped up, it looked like absolute dog shit. So you can also be this super active person and be unhealthy. So that just,
Yep.
provide that extra context of the lens that we're looking at this through, so people don't get caught up in, the fat shaming and all this other shit, because that's not what we're trying to do here.
Yeah. And with kids, it's a little bit trickier. When I have patients who are adults, and I talk to them about their body habitus, right? So their body composition, or their weight, because a lot of patients want to talk about their weight. I talk to the patient, right? But if it's a child, I can maybe talk to the child depending on the age and depending on their um, you know, understanding of the issue, but I have to then also talk to the parents. And a lot of times the parents are in the exact same situation, if not worse than the kid. And so now I'm, counseling a whole family on lifestyle changes that need to happen, because in order for our children to get healthier, we need to be healthier as parents and also not
Yeah.
parents.
And I
So,
think the way we're trending is this, because obviously the kids are going to follow the parents' lead,
right.
and they're going to follow what they see of my parents, my neighbors,
My
my
aunt, my
my aunt,
uncle,
my
my
uncle,
cousin,
my
yeah,
cousin.
anybody.
All these people look a certain way, they eat a certain way, then you're just falling in line because you're a fucking child. You don't go to the grocery store. You
Right.
know what I mean? You don't fucking pay the bills. So you're taking what you're given. So that's where the parent has to be aware of their own shortcoming in terms of health, wellness, fitness, etc., so that they can provide a better example to the child. And I argue, I contend that even if you don't have children, you have a part in this.
Yeah.
Because when they look around at other adults, they're like, oh, okay, this is the thing. And if I'm seeing a bunch of really unhealthy adults, then you're thinking that that's the thing.
Yeah.
Versus if you're seeing a bunch of healthy adults, then you're trending in the opposite direction.
Right.
And if you're amongst a bunch of unhealthy adults and then you see a really healthy one, then you might ask questions like, holy shit, that's like a break in the cycle. What is that?
Right.
You know, um, it it begs the question, because I think we're creating this trend where we're getting sicker younger.
Correct.
So whereas, when I was growing up, heart attacks and things like that were for people in their 60s and 70s, then it became their 50s, then it became the 40s, and now think about it. If you're growing up overweight, if you're growing up with type 2 diabetes, meaning you're not even a college student and you already have type 2 diabetes, or you're not a college student and your body composition is pretty freaking bad, what's going to happen when you become a full-blown adult? So now we're looking at heart attacks in our 30s.
Yep.
Like, we're looking at type 2 diabetes at the age of 15, and then heart attacks when you're 30s, and then we're looking at death when in your 50s, if you can survive a couple heart attacks. Like, that's where we're trending. So you see how this is becoming a snowballing issue with the life expectancy of the country, which, by the way, actually went down.
It did.
So this is something that we need to talk about, and we need to completely unfuck ourselves on this with this thing. And everybody has a part in this. This is a
Yeah.
serious thing.
Yeah. So unfortunately, on the from the medical side, I recently did a CME on type 2 diabetes in children. And there's very little research on actually how to appropriately manage it, which is terrifying. There's also very little information about how to prevent it. And that's more of the lifestyle stuff. On one hand, because of the nature of the more complications seen with type 2 diabetes, if it develops in childhood, they are recommending to be more aggressive with the treatment and start medication initially along with lifestyle. But if anybody has been to a doctor, you know that the medication will be pushed and lifestyle will be glazed over. And so I think that there's a huge missing link on the prevention of type 2 diabetes. And it is interesting, and I don't know how many people agree with this, but I do believe some of it is beyond our day-to-day control with the quality of the food that we're given in America. Even if you cook at home, they're just basically destroying us metabolically with a lot of the food out there. So I think that's a huge factor. One we will not get into because it's not.
This is the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah.
Like, we're just presenting the tip of the iceberg, and then whether you choose to or not, to dive and see how big
Right.
the thing is, and we'll
Yeah.
clue
But I
you in a
think
little bit.
a big thing is the lack of inactivity in kids, and we
Lack
saw
of
that
activity.
lack of activity in children. Thank you. And I think we saw that skyrocket during the pandemic when all the kids were brought in to learn from home.
Yeah,
They weren't allowed to do things.
I think the consequences of that have yet to,
Yeah.
it's starting to, but I think it'll take 10 years for us to see
Yeah.
just how bad a decision that was. But prior to that, you know, the be at home stuff, um, I think we were already in a dangerous position. Things like taking physical
Yep.
education out of schools,
Right.
which, you know, what, like right now, what public school has physical education other than it's elective or it's no longer a
We're talking
mandatory
about
thing?
required.
Yeah,
It's in the
required. It's
school.
in the school.
It's in
Like
your day.
I grew up taking PE class till I was a senior in high school.
Yeah.
Done.
I think I did, but then once I got to high school, you could, turned into an elective. It wasn't a requirement. Maybe it was as a freshman,
Hmm.
but I always ended up taking at least one.
Yeah, ours was a requirement till senior, till
Right.
graduation. Now, you know, how serious it was, that becomes the question, and that's the problem. Because if it's a complete joke or it's just a, you know, you're teenagers, you're gonna do stupid
Yeah.
shit during PE. But
Well, so it's not new that they took PE out of
no, it's been
schools.
out for a while.
So it was like in the 40s to 60s when they started decreasing physical education because there was a push from Congress, both sides, saying we need to increase our academics. And I think this is because 40s to 60s would have been World War II era and like,
Post World, yeah,
yeah,
post World War II.
towards the end of, well, no, 40s, it was in the 40s, right? I said 40s to 60s.
39 started. Yeah.
39, so yeah, the early 40s, right? So the whole we need to teach our kids to be smarter, and it sort of that war sort of skewed our academics to be more in line with producing, engineers, doctors, things like that. And so when they increase the push of academics, one of the first things to go is physical education.
Now this rabbit hole, because this brings a really, you know how physical education got into schools?
Yeah.
World War I, because they were
Well,
finding
yeah,
that people were too weak to do the job
yeah.
in the front.
But then, what was it? World War I or World War II, where they told people at home who weren't over to stop eating meat because they were rationing all the meat to send to the soldiers.
That might have been World War II. It might have been more. Good question.
So it's
We
one or
more to follow
two,
on that,
but I
but
think that also correlates with our fucked up food pyramid that we got once they started doing that.
yeah, and
And so
that's one that we
if you
can
start
delve.
diving into the history of the US, you'll
Yep.
become all sorts of fucked up in the
Yeah,
head.
yeah, and like coincidences.
Yeah.
Anyway, but World War I, they found that the average person was too weak to do the job
Mm-hmm.
overseas, so they started doing the physical education and stuff in
Yeah.
school. World War II obviously put, you know, you put a better product forth, and in the 50s and stuff, physical education was still a very, you know, you had the president's fitness test and all this
Yeah.
other
Yeah.
bullshit,
Yeah.
you know, and pull-ups and push-ups. You see those videos from schools in the 50s, and kids were pretty fucking fit,
Yeah.
and they could do, you know, the average boy could do a pull-up, they could do push-ups, etc., etc. They could run, they could do
They
obstacle
checked your
courses.
flexibility.
Yep. So that was, you know, and what did they look like? They were all, the body composition was
Yeah.
in check. Now, granted, I think the complete elimination of a physical education requirement
That's wrong.
is completely wrong. And I think it's more recent to where like the majority, we're talking in the 90 some percent of public schools do not have a physical education requirement.
Yeah.
Um, that is a problem. It becomes an elective or you play a sport, etc., etc.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that, I think that is, now we're getting into what caused the problem, you know,
Yeah.
and I think this is one of them.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think the diet of the typical American's a problem, whether that's the foods you choose or the additives that big food and the government have decided to put in. Also, the lack of physical activity.
And well, because we've completely disconnected ourselves from physical culture
Right. Yeah.
and the value of physical culture, which,
Right.
do we need to go into that? Like,
Yeah. And then there's, the whole nature versus nurture. Is this issue with type 2 diabetes in kids is a genetic predisposition? Is there something innate in them that's triggering them to do it? So one of the risk factors to look for type 2 diabetes in children is if there is family members with type 2 diabetes. That whole joke of type 2 diabetes doesn't run in your family doesn't run. That's where, yes, having family members who are type 2 diabetic is a risk factor because of the way you live. I don't fully believe that it's passed on genetically. There is some, if the mother has diabetes, so when the baby's in utero, or gestational diabetes, yes, that can happen. So I mean, it's all on us as adults. It's a huge part of it's on us.
Did you remember the breastfeeding thing too?
No.
So recent study as well of uh, breastfeeding, breastfed children whose the mother had diabetes or the mother was obese or whatever, they were passing that on, that trend. So now we're getting into a situation where it's almost becoming a genetic thing.
Yeah.
Where not quite, because if mom had been in better physical state, a better state of health, then it wouldn't happen. But these breastfed kids that the mother had diabetes or the mother was overweight, had body composition issues, the kids were more likely to
Yep.
be overweight. And not only that, then they had like a prefrontal cortex development issues as well. They were more likely to have that as well. Now that's concerning, because now there's a situation or proof where you're literally passing a predisposition of lifestyle disease to your child because you
Of
make the choices you make, because it's not because you had that in you, unless your mother was the same
well
thing.
so then we could equate unhealthy diet high in sugar that to ingestion of alcohol. So fetal alcohol syndrome is something that's passed on because of what the mother does while pregnant. So
you're getting there. I mean, if you're pregnant and you are living on fast food while you're pregnant, I would say, live your life, YOLO, but you're fucking up.
Yeah.
Plain and simple.
So, what is type 2 diabetes? I just want to take a second to do that, because type 2 diabetes is when there's so much sugar being ingested that the body can't keep up, so it becomes less insulin sensitive, and so it just doesn't work, right? So insulin can't keep up with the high amounts of sugar coming in. The cells aren't responding to insulin because the insulin keeps coming, and it's like, whatever. And so now there's just such high blood sugar. So it does have to do with what that kid is ingesting. Huge part.
Mm-hmm.
So,
that is, I mean, a lot of it is going to come down to nutrition. But even, as you say, there's no such thing as passive wellness.
Yep.
Like, kids are going to be lazy. Like when I was growing up, it was the TV. And then my dad had to like fucking drag me out to do shit. Like literally, hey, go clean this, go do that.
But if you look at it, it's because your parents were doing shit, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I grew up in a house where my grandfather lifted weights into his 60s. My father lifted weights in the garage, so I had that subconsciously in my mind.
But no, but I'm saying your parents weren't sitting on their butt all day. They were working. They were like, hey, we have to do this, so you need to do this,
Yeah, and that's an old school thing too.
Yeah.
And even, I mean, it was more than that. You just make shit up for you not to be sitting on your ass. It's like, hey, like, I swear to God, he probably did things on.
Like, I can't sit on my ass, so you're not going to sit on your ass.
More than that. Like, he probably sees some shit and he just makes something up for me to do. Be like, let me fuck this up real quick. Hey, this ain't for, you know what I mean? So that I would have to do something, which now I'm grateful for that. But yeah, that's different. I mean, that's how active the situation has to be to steer the kids in a better direction.
I do think that taking physical activity out of children's day-to-day lives is a huge disservice to them. And so if you want to look to the academic level, a 20-minute jog, an hour of a PE class, 20-minute walk, whatever, is going to do more for them academically and mental health wise than spending that time studying or in an academic class.
Cognitively too, your synapses is better if you move. I mean,
as well as if you want to go into stress, because a lot of kids, you could argue a lot of kids are under more stress due to social media, constantly being bombarded, all these things. Kids do just feel stress more, whether it's more stress or not, I don't know, but they feel it more. Taking physical activity gives them a great outlet, takes away a great outlet for them for that. Also, like, I grew up, I didn't necessarily want to spend a lot of time at home. And so I spent a lot of time like, what sport can I do? Like, what practice can I go to? And things like that. So what I'm saying is that physical activity, that sport, that provided a place for me, that provided, like resilience. It provided teamwork. It like a team atmosphere. It provided a lot of stuff for me that I think maybe some kids are missing in their home life. So if we take that away, PE class, things like that, are we taking away that for some kids? And so I think that it's not just bring PE back in so our kids don't get fat. It's more their mental and physical health depends on being active throughout the day. We need to incorporate that into their day-to-day somehow.
Yeah, this is like the three-legged stool thing that I like to operate of. You're a physical being, obviously. You're a mental and you're emotional being. And if you focus on one and neglect the other two, you're going to be a pretty shitty person. You're not going to be healthy. So you have to put time and effort into all three. So you could be as the smartest dude reading all the freaking books. If you neglect your emotional and you neglect your physical, you're just a brain, a high quality brain in a shitty vessel. That's not going to cut it either. You're not going to be a healthy person. You're not going to be as successful as you can be in life. You're not living up to your potential. So you have to spend time on all three:
Yeah.
physical, emotional, and the mental. And this is the case here. They intersect though. That's the thing where people like, oh, what's all this physical activity going to do for motherfucker? It's going to help you with all the other ones. It's going to put you in a better mood. It's going to get your brain firing better. And you can move that big ass brain of yours around the world better now because you're in better shape.
Yep.
Makes sense? So
Yeah.
that's the whole why this is so important. We want people to develop in these areas completely, and this leads to a better adjusted member of society. I think, like a
Right.
more balanced person.
Right.
And we can certainly use more balanced people.
Yeah. And so, like we mentioned, for parents, you need to show your kids, not tell your kids.
Yeah, that do as I say, not as I do
Right.
shit never worked.
Non-parents, us, we need to show as well as not just say. I could be showing to support my friends who do have kids, so a lot of my friends who have kids I met through being active, and the fact that I'm still active and support them in their activity, whatever, that's a support right there to make their kids healthier, right? And also, it's not as kids, like if they see us. So I'm a medical provider. If a kid comes in and sees me fit and I'm, giving his parent health advice, that's awesome. Dan's training people who have kids, and sometimes your clients bring in their kids
Yeah,
and you train
last
the
week,
kids too, or you train kids yourself.
I one of my clients brought his kid, and I thought that was pretty cool
Yeah.
because I mean the kid's 8, and he sees his dad working out, and his dad, he's trying to get in shape, but his dad's like, hey, this is what we have to do, blah blah blah, and he's presenting that to the child, and the
Yeah.
kid's having fun working out with dad, and they're connecting over a little physical struggle for an hour, and I think that's really good stuff
Yeah.
because now the kid was 8, so that's imprinted in the kid's mind, like, hey,
Yeah.
this has value,
Or
this is
now
fun, this.
he's tied to being physically active, spending quality time with his
Yep.
dad.
So there's a
And that's
positive
awesome.
emotional
Yeah.
connection with that.
Yeah.
And you know what? I'm not telling you that you gotta like put your foot in these kids' asses. Like it has to be fun. Okay. And it's not a structured workout. And I get it too. Like I meant to say this earlier. Like not everybody's gonna be an athlete.
Right.
You have creatives, you have mathematical geniuses, and all this other stuff. So kids are gonna veer like people towards certain things, but we should all look to find the way that physical activity fits that kid. Maybe the mathematical guy likes to do hikes,
Yeah.
maybe the creative one likes to, I don't know,
Well, even when we
go
were growing up,
surfing,
even
so
Nintendo was the power pad, remember?
yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's stuff that it just needs to happen. It's the point here. It's like, oh, my kid doesn't want to do it. It's like, no, this needs to happen.
Yeah.
Okay, this needs to happen. The future of society
Yeah.
depends on this because thinking things like mortality rate, and do you really want to gift the kids the gift of chronic illness for the rest of their life at a younger age?
Yeah. Or like when I see some of my patients and I'm talking to them about their diet and their exercise, and they use their kid as an excuse. Like, well, I eat this way because that's what my kid likes to eat. I don't exercise because I have to go pick up my kid from this, right? I have a friend who's a parent of 5 who told me something, and it's an amazing thing that I want to quote. There's miles difference between being selfless and selfish, and you want to land somewhere in the middle, right? And so I think a lot of people get into this routine where their kids become such a top priority. And I'm not saying that they shouldn't be a priority, but maybe you need to level up yourself a little bit in there too. So they eat poorly and then they don't move. But my concern, and this is what I tell my patients, if you don't improve yourself now, I'm going to have this conversation. Your kid is going to have this same issue that you're having 20 years from now for them. Is that what you want for your child?
And we're going to be having the same conversation with them that we're having with you about the kid.
Yeah.
So your grandkid is.
And so I get a lot of my patients who they don't like the weight they are. They don't like that they don't exercise. They want to eat better. They want to do these things. And sometimes they're crying in my office or whatever. And so it may be a little blunt, but I tell them, do you want me to have this? Would you like for me to have this conversation with your kid? Would you like your kid to feel the way you feel right now? And they say no. And then there needs to be a change that's made.
And let's really talk, like, you can't pour from an empty cup. Meaning, if you are putting others ahead of you, and this is the job, you sacrifice when you're a parent. But at some point, you have to set yourself up for success so that you can put out quality for the people that you have to take care of. And this is a parent thing, but this is also a leadership thing.
Yep.
When you're a leader of an organization or you're managing a group of people, you're there for the people that you work for, or the people that are under you, but you really are working for them to provide them with an environment for success. Same thing with the kids. But if you're not in a place where you can put out quality energy and quality examples and stuff, then you're doing a disservice to the people that you're trying to serve. So you got to take care of yourself,
right,
so that you can take care of others.
Right. And we're here to help you how to figure that out. So feel free to DM us on Instagram at Achieve the Lifestyle. And again, we know we're not parents, but we know a lot of parents, and we know a lot of parents who have found a way to keep that balance. Some days is better than others.
Mm-hmm.
Us without kids, some days is better than others, but there is a balance in there. So we could lead you to resources that have helped them to help you. Like, it is doable. Is it easy? No, but it's likely some simple things. And we are here to help. That's the main thing.
Yeah. It doesn't have to be pretty. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to get done. It's one of those things. Take care of yourself so that you can take care of the kids. Okay. If you don't have kids and you're watching this, kids are fucking watching you too.
Yep.
That's all. My niece.
Yeah.
Yeah. My niece saw a video of her. My niece is turned 4 this month. Saw a video of her lifting on my father's phone, on her granddad's phone. And then she's trying to pick stuff up, like empty water jugs and stuff. Because she's like, oh, yeah, look, I'm strong too.
Yeah.
That is cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. What we want. So we don't have kids. But you see how she had an effect on this child's life by proxy.
Yeah.
So we're all in on this.
And maybe you don't have a kid, but maybe your friend does, or your sister does, or your brother, or somebody
some
does.
Kid that sees you all the time.
Yeah.
Or maybe you're an educator. Ooh, don't even get me started. Maybe you're a teacher. Things like that where kids see you and they're like, oh,
Yeah, teamwork makes the dream work. So it's all of us. Kids are not.
It takes a village. Yep.
I think teamwork makes the dream work.
No, it takes a village. It's better because it's been around for longer.
All right.
So,
all right.
Put a kibosh on it.
Yeah.
It's done. See you guys on the next one. Follow us on the gram at
Achieve the Lifestyle. Bye. Oh my God. All right.